The smoke rose from the crashed ship like a black snake climbing toward the pale sky. Sergeant Daniel Cole held up his fist, and the 4 soldiers behind him stopped moving. They stood on the surface of 4, a small moon covered in gray dust and sharp rocks. Nothing lived here. Nothing grew. It was the perfect place for ships to die. Daniel looked through his helmet's scanner. The crashed vessel was one of the enemy's transport ships. It had come down hard, breaking apart on impact. Pieces of metal and strange technology were scattered across the ground for nearly half a mile. "Sergeant, I'm reading no life signs," said Private Amy Torres, checking her own scanner. She was young, only 23, but she had already seen more death than most people saw in a lifetime. The war had taken everything soft from her eyes. Daniel nodded but kept watching the wreckage. Something felt wrong. After 11 years of fighting he had learned to trust his instincts. The aliens were clever and dangerous. They had killed millions of humans since first contact. They showed no mercy and expected none in return. "We go in slow," Daniel said. "Check for survivors, salvage what we can, then get back to the steadfast." The team moved forward carefully. Their boots crunched on the gray dust. The crashed ship groaned and creaked as fire ate through its hull. Daniel could smell the burning even through his helmet's filters, a strange, sweet smell that made his stomach turn. They found the first body near the main section of the wreckage. It was a warrior, its 4 arms still gripping a weapon, its compound eyes staring at nothing. The creature's exoskeleton was cracked and broken. Purple blood had pooled beneath it and was already drying in the thin atmosphere. "One down," said Corporal Ben Hardy, kicking the body with his boot. "Wish they were all this easy." Daniel said nothing. He had stopped celebrating dead enemies years ago. War had a way of taking the joy out of everything, even victory. They moved deeper into the wreckage. They found more bodies, some warriors and some workers. They had different castes, each bred for specific purposes. The workers were smaller and weaker, their wings thin and delicate. They were not fighters, but humans had learned to fear them anyway. In the early days of the war, workers had carried bombs into human settlements, sacrificing themselves to kill as many enemies as possible. "Sergeant over here," called Private Lisa. She was standing near a collapsed section of the hull, her weapon raised. Daniel hurried over. He expected another body, maybe a survivor that needed to be dealt with. Instead, he found something that made his heart stop. It was a child. The young was trapped beneath a heavy beam of metal. She was small, barely 3 feet tall, with wings that were still soft and translucent. Adult had wings like stained glass, hard and colorful. This one's wings were like wet paper, the mark of a juvenile who had not yet matured. The child was alive. Her large eyes, deep purple and filled with fear, stared up at Daniel. She made a sound, a high clicking noise that might have been a cry for help or a scream of terror. "It's just a kid," Lisa said, her voice uncertain. Amy stepped forward, her weapon raised. "It's a young one today is a warrior tomorrow. We should finish it and move on." Daniel held up his hand. "Stand down, Torres." "Sergeant, with respect, this is stupid. They don't take human prisoners. They don't show mercy to our children. Why should we show mercy to theirs?" Daniel knew she was right. They had done terrible things. They had bombed human colonies, killed families, shown no distinction between soldiers and civilians. Every human who survived the war carried scars, visible and invisible. Amy had lost her brother in the Battle of New Sydney. She had every reason to hate. But Daniel looked at the trapped child and saw only fear, the same fear he would see in any child, human or otherwise. The young was hurt and alone, crying for help in a language he could not understand. She was not a soldier. She was not a threat. She was just a kid who wanted her mother. "We're not killing children," Daniel said firmly. "Help me lift this beam." Amy's jaw tightened, but she did not argue further. She and Ben grabbed one end of the beam while Daniel grabbed the other. Lisa kept her weapon ready, watching for any sign of threat. They lifted the beam and pushed it aside. The young tried to crawl away, but her leg was broken. She collapsed after only a few feet, making those clicking sounds again. Daniel realized she was crying. He knelt beside her and held up his empty hands. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The child stared at him with those huge purple eyes. Her whole body was shaking. Up close, Daniel could see patterns on her exoskeleton, swirls of gold and silver that seemed to shimmer even in the dim light. He had never seen markings like that on any before. "Can you understand me?" he asked. The child was silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice that clicked and buzzed, she spoke. "Please, no hurt, please." She knew some common tongue. That was surprising. Most refused to learn human language, considering it beneath them. "I won't hurt you," Daniel said. "What's your name?" "Thessaly," the child said. "I am Thessaly." "Okay, Thessaly. I'm Daniel. I'm going to pick you up now. We're going to get you somewhere safe." He reached for her and she flinched. But she did not fight when he lifted her carefully in his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Her broken leg hung at a wrong angle and she whimpered in pain but did not scream. "Sergeant, this is a mistake," Amy said. "Maybe," Daniel agreed. "But it's my mistake to make. Let's move." They made their way back to the shuttle. Thessaly clung to Daniel's armor, her small claws digging into the fabric. She kept looking around with wide eyes, watching the human soldiers like they might attack at any moment. "Where were you going?" Daniel asked her as they walked. "Why were you on that ship?" "Going, safe place," Thessaly said. "Bad ones came, ship fell, guardian, gone." "Who's your guardian?" But Thessaly did not answer. She just buried her face against Daniel's chest and made those clicking, crying sounds again. Daniel held her and kept walking. He did not know what he was going to do with an enemy child. He did not know how his captain would react. He did not know if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But he knew he could not leave a child to die alone in the wreckage of a crashed ship on a dead moon. Whatever else the war had taken from him, it had not taken that. The shuttle lifted off from 4, carrying one human squad and one small alien girl who kept whispering the same word over and over in her own language. Daniel did not understand the word, but he could guess its meaning from the desperate way she said it. She was calling for her mother. Captain Gregory Lane was not a cruel man, but he was a practical one. He had commanded the Steadfast for 6 years, and in that time he had learned that survival in war required hard choices. Soft hearts got people killed. So when Daniel Cole walked onto his ship carrying a child, Captain Lane felt his blood pressure rise to dangerous levels. "Sergeant Cole," he said, his voice quiet and controlled, "please explain to me why there is an enemy alien on my ship." Daniel stood at attention, still holding Thessaly in his arms. The young had fallen asleep during the shuttle ride, exhausted from fear and pain. Her broken leg had been wrapped in a basic splint, but she needed proper medical care. "Sir, she's a child. She was trapped in the wreckage. I couldn't leave her." "You couldn't leave her," Lane repeated. "Do you remember what they did to the colony on Prime? They didn't leave the children there either, Sergeant. They killed every single one." "I remember, sir, but I'm not them. We're not them." Captain Lane stared at Daniel for a long moment. The bridge was silent. Every officer watched the confrontation, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Lane sighed. "Take her to medical bay. Have doctor look at that leg. You have 72 hours to figure out what to do with her. After that, I'm reporting this up the chain of command, and whatever happens is out of my hands." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Sergeant. This could end very badly for all of us." Daniel carried Thessaly to the medical bay. Dr. Carroll, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and tired eyes, looked at the alien child with obvious discomfort. But she was a doctor first and a soldier second. She set the broken leg, cleaned the wounds, and made sure the child was stable. Thessaly woke up during the treatment. She screamed when she saw where she was, surrounded by humans in a strange metal room. Daniel held her hand and spoke softly until she calmed down. "You're safe," he told her. "No one here will hurt you." "Why?" Thessaly asked. "Humans hate humans. This is war." "Yes, it's war, but you're not a soldier, you're just a kid." Thessaly looked at him with those deep purple eyes. "You are strange human, Daniel." He smiled. "I've been told that before." Over the next 2 days, Daniel became Thessaly's guardian. He brought her food from the ship's kitchen, trying to find things she could eat. Most human food made her sick, but she liked sweet things. Fruit and honey became her favorites. He talked to her for hours, learning about her life. She told him about her home, a beautiful palace made of living crystal that sang when the wind blew through it. She told him about gardens filled with flowers that glowed in the dark. She told him about her teachers, her friends, her favorite games. But she never talked about her parents. Whenever Daniel asked, she would go quiet and change the subject. Amy Torres kept her distance at first. She would watch Daniel and Thessaly from across the room, her face hard and unreadable. But on the second day, she surprised everyone by sitting down next to the alien child. "You know how to play cards?" Amy asked. Thessaly shook her head. "What is cards?" Amy pulled out a worn deck from her pocket. "Let me show you." She taught Thessaly a simple game, and soon the young was laughing, a clicking sound that was strange but also somehow warm. Amy's hard expression softened just a little. "She's not what I expected," Amy admitted to Daniel later. "I thought all were cold and cruel, but she's just a kid." "That's what I've been trying to tell you. It doesn't change what her people did, what they're still doing." "No," Daniel agreed, "but maybe it changes what we should do." On the third day, everything changed. Lieutenant, the ship's intelligence officer, called Daniel to her station. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Her job was to know things, and she was very good at it. "I ran the girl's biological signature through our database," said. "I was curious about those markings on her exoskeleton, the gold and silver patterns." "What about them?" Pulled up an image on her screen. It showed a, but not like any Daniel had seen before. This one was massive, with wings that looked like stained glass windows in an ancient church. She sat on a throne of crystal, surrounded by warriors. "Those patterns are royal markings," said. "Only members of the ruling family have them. That child you rescued isn't just any. She's Princess Thessaly, only daughter of High Queen." Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. The High Queen, the one who ordered the attack on Earth's outer colonies. The same. Her daughter was being transported to a hidden sanctuary when raiders attacked. The thought she was dead. They've been searching for her body for weeks. Daniel sat down heavily. High Queen was the most powerful being in the Dominion. She had ruled for 300 years. She had started the war with humanity. She had personally ordered attacks that killed millions. And Daniel had her daughter on his ship. "If the Queen finds out we have her," continued, "she will send every ship in her fleet to get her back. She will burn planets to recover her child. Or," Daniel said slowly, "we could use this, end the war." That's exactly what Captain Lane is going to say. The girl is the most valuable hostage in history. We could force the Queen to negotiate. Daniel thought about Thessaly, about her laughter and her tears, about the way she called for her mother in her sleep. He thought about using her as a bargaining chip, a piece in a political game she didn't understand. "No," he said. "What?" "I'm not going to let that happen. She's not a hostage. She's not a weapon. She's a child who wants to go home." Stared at him. "Daniel, think about what you're saying. This could end the war. Or it could make it worse. If we use her against the Queen, we'll never forgive humanity. She'll fight until every last human is dead. But if we return her willingly, with no conditions, we show that humans aren't the monsters they think we are." That's insane. The captain will never allow it. Then I won't ask for permission. That night, Daniel made his decision. He could not let Thessaly become a prisoner. He could not watch her be used as a tool in a war she had no part in starting. He had carried her out of the wreckage, and he would carry her all the way home. He packed supplies, stole access codes, and waited until the night shift when the shuttle bay would be almost empty. Thessaly watched him with knowing eyes as he prepared to leave. "You are taking me home." "Yes, to your mother." "You will be in trouble. Your people will be angry." "Probably, but it's the right thing to do." Thessaly was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "My mother, she is not kind, she is cold. She does not smile or laugh. But when I was small and scared of storms, she would hold me until the thunder stopped. She loves me, Daniel, even if she forgets to show it." Daniel nodded. "Then let's go remind her." They slipped through the ship's corridors like shadows, heading for the shuttle bay and the journey that would change everything. The stolen shuttle was small and fast, built for quick reconnaissance missions. Daniel pushed the engines as hard as they would go, putting distance between himself and the Steadfast. Every minute counted now. Thessaly sat in the co-pilot seat, her broken legs stretched out carefully. She watched the stars stream past the window, her purple eyes reflecting the light of distant suns. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "I never looked before. During the trip to the safe place, I was too scared to look." "Space is beautiful," Daniel agreed. "It's also very dangerous. We need to be careful." The first 12 hours passed without incident. Daniel navigated through empty sectors, avoiding major shipping lanes and military patrol routes. He knew both human and forces would be looking for them soon. He was right. On the second day, the Steadfast's communication reached them across the void. "Sergeant Daniel Cole, this is Captain Lane. You have stolen military property and abducted a prisoner of war. You are hereby ordered to return immediately. Failure to comply will result in charges of desertion and treason. You will be court-martialed and executed. Please, Daniel, don't do this." Daniel turned off the communication and kept flying. The human military was not the only problem. They entered the contested zone on the third day, a region of space where human and forces clashed regularly. Here, ships disappeared without warning. Here, death waited behind every asteroid. They encountered their first enemy on the fourth day. Not but raiders, the same pirates who had attacked Thessaly's transport. There were 3 of them, small fast ships with heavy weapons. They surrounded the shuttle and demanded surrender. Their leader, an alien of a species Daniel didn't recognize, appeared on the. "We know what you carry, human," the raider said. "The princess. She's worth more than your entire planet. Hand her over and we'll let you live." "No deal," Daniel said. "Then you'll die." What followed was the most desperate fight of Daniel's life. He was not a pilot by training, but he had learned enough over the years to survive. He threw the shuttle into a crazy pattern of spins and dives, dodging energy blasts that would have torn them apart. Thessaly screamed as the ship shook from a near miss. Daniel grabbed her hand and squeezed. "Hold on," he said. "I'm going to try something stupid." He flew directly toward an asteroid field, a dense cluster of rocks that no sane pilot would enter. The raiders followed, confident in their faster ships. It was a mistake. Daniel knew his shuttle could take hits that would destroy the lighter raider craft. He flew into the asteroids, bouncing off rocks, taking damage but surviving. Behind him, one raider crashed into a massive stone and exploded. Another clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. The third raider was smarter. He pulled back and waited at the edge of the field. "You can't stay in there forever, human. Eventually you'll have to come out, and I'll be waiting." Daniel looked at his fuel gauge. The raider was right. They couldn't hide forever, but he had another idea. He powered down all non-essential systems and went silent. The shuttle drifted among the asteroids like just another piece of space debris. Hours passed. Thessaly fell asleep against his shoulder. Finally, the raider grew impatient. He moved closer, scanning for any sign of life. Daniel waited until he was close, so close that evasion would be impossible. Then he fired everything. The shuttle's weapons were not powerful, but at point-blank range they didn't need to be. The raider ship's shields collapsed, and the second volley tore through its hull. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that briefly lit up the asteroid field like a new sun. Daniel slumped in his seat, exhausted. They had survived, but barely. The shuttle was damaged, leaking fuel, and they were still days away from space. "You are a good fighter," Thessaly said quietly, "for strange human." Daniel laughed weakly. "Thanks, I think." On the sixth day, they found help. A ship appeared on their sensors, fast and closing quickly. Daniel prepared for another fight, but then the communication system crackled to life. "Hey, Sarge, need a hand." It was Amy Torres. She wasn't alone. Behind her small fighter were two more ships, carrying Corporal Ben Hardy and Private Lisa. They had followed him from the Steadfast. "What are you doing here?" Daniel asked as they docked together in space, transferring fuel and supplies. Amy shrugged. "Captain Lane wanted to arrest you. We disagreed. Things got complicated." "You're all deserters now." "Yeah, well, some things are more important than following orders." She looked at Thessaly, who was watching the humans with wide eyes. "When I taught her cards, she told me about her mother, about how much she missed her. No kid should be away from their mom, even a kid." "I said she was my enemy," Ben added. "She said she didn't know how to be anyone's enemy. She just wanted to go home. Hard to argue with that." Lisa just smiled. "Besides, Sarge, you're terrible at flying. You'd never make it without us." Daniel felt something warm spread through his chest. He had thought he was alone in this. He had been wrong. They continued the journey together. On the 8th day, they reached the border. Beyond this point, human ships were shot on sight. No exceptions, no mercy. Daniel broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Sergeant Daniel Cole of the human military. I am returning Princess Thessaly to her people. I come in peace. Please do not fire." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the space in front of them filled with warships. Dozens of them, then hundreds, appearing out of nowhere like ghosts materializing from the darkness. "We are so dead," Ben muttered. But the ships did not fire. Instead, they formed an escort, surrounding the small human vessels on all sides. A message came through, translated by the shuttle's computer. "Human vessel, you will follow us. The High Queen wishes to see you." Daniel looked at Thessaly. She was trembling, but not from fear, from excitement. "We're going home," she whispered. They followed the escort through space that no human had ever seen and survived. They passed space stations the size of small moons, ships that made human vessels look like toys, and weapons platforms that could destroy entire planets. Finally, they reached Velar Prime, the of the Dominion. It was beautiful in a strange, alien way. The planet's surface glowed with bioluminescent cities. Ships swarmed around it like bees around a hive. "This is it," Daniel said. "Are you ready?" Thessaly took his hand. Her small claws dug into his palm, but he didn't pull away. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if Mother is angry? What if she doesn't want me anymore?" "She's your mom, Thessaly. She's been searching for you since the crash. Of course she wants you." "But I was with humans. I laughed with them. I played games with them. That is wrong. Hate humans." Daniel knelt down so he could look into her eyes. "Then maybe it's time for that to change. Maybe you can show your people that we're not monsters, that we can be kind, that we can do the right thing even when it's hard." Thessaly nodded slowly. "I will try." Their shuttle descended through the atmosphere of Velar Prime, heading toward a destiny that would change two civilizations forever. The palace of the High Queen was carved from living crystal. It rose from the ground like a frozen waterfall, its spires reaching toward the purple sky. Lights moved within its walls, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Daniel had ever seen. Their shuttle landed on a platform of polished stone. The moment the door opened, Daniel felt the heat of the alien world wash over him. The air smelled sweet and strange, filled with scents he could not identify. Warriors surrounded them immediately. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with 4 arms and wings folded against their backs. Their compound eyes glittered with hatred as they looked at the humans. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. "Leave your weapons," commanded the lead warrior. "You will not need them." Daniel and his squad had no choice. They dropped their guns on the ground and stepped forward with empty hands. Amy walked beside Daniel, her jaw tight with fear she refused to show. Ben and Lisa followed close behind. Thessaly walked in the middle of the group, protected on all sides. She had been quiet since they landed, her eyes fixed on the palace that was her home. They were escorted through massive doors and into the palace itself. The interior was even more impressive than the outside. Crystal pillars held up a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. The walls were covered with carvings that told the history of the people, thousands of years of conquest and glory. And everywhere there were. Thousands of them lined the great hall, standing in perfect rows, workers with their thin wings, warriors with their heavy armor, nobles with their bright patterns. All of them watched the humans with cold, silent hatred. Daniel had been in battles. He had faced death more times than he could count. But walking through that hall, surrounded by enemies who wanted nothing more than to tear him apart, was the most frightening experience of his life. At the far end of the hall sat the throne. It was made of the same living crystal as the palace, but it glowed brighter, pulsing with inner light. And upon it sat High Queen. She was magnificent. Her exoskeleton was deep black, covered with patterns of gold and silver that seemed to move in the light. Her wings were spread behind her, spanning nearly 30 feet, each one a masterpiece of color and design. Her eyes, large and ancient, held the weight of centuries. Daniel had seen images of the queen before, but nothing prepared him for her presence. Power radiated from her like heat from a sun. This was a being who had ruled 1,000 worlds, who had crushed rebellions and conquered enemies, who had never known defeat. And she had ordered the deaths of millions of humans. They stopped 20 feet from the throne. The warriors forced them to their knees, pushing them down with rough hands. Only Thessaly remained standing, staring up at her mother. Queen spoke. Her voice was like music, if music could cut through steel. The translator in Daniel's ear converted her words. "Humans, you enter my world, you stand in my palace. You have taken something precious from me." Her eyes moved to Thessaly. "My daughter, my only child, what gives you the right?" Daniel spoke before he could stop himself. "Your Majesty, we didn't take her, we saved her." The hall erupted in angry clicking. Weapons were raised. Warriors stepped forward. One word from the queen and Daniel would die. But held up one of her 4 hands, and silence fell instantly. "You saved her," the queen repeated. "Explain." Daniel stood slowly. The warriors tensed but did not stop him. "My squad found the wreckage of her transport ship on 4. She was trapped, injured, alone. The ship had been attacked by raiders, the same raiders who wanted to sell her to the highest bidder. I could have left her there to die. Many of my people wanted me to. She was the enemy after all." He paused, gathering his courage. The queen watched him with unreadable eyes. "But she wasn't my enemy. She was a scared child crying for her mother. I couldn't walk away from that. I couldn't let her die alone on a dead moon, so I picked her up and carried her. And when I found out who she was, I could have used her. She could have been a hostage. She could have ended the war on our terms. But that would have been wrong. She's not a weapon. She's not a bargaining chip. She's your daughter, and she belongs here with you." The hall was silent. Every stood frozen, watching their queen for her reaction. "You expect me to believe," said slowly, "that a human soldier from a species we have hunted for 11 years rescued my daughter out of kindness. That you came here, risking death, for no reason except to bring her home." "Yes," Daniel said simply. "Why, what do you want in return?" "Nothing." The word hung in the air. The queen leaned forward on her throne. "Nothing," she repeated. "You expect nothing, you ask for nothing. You want no reward, no treaty, no peace. You came all this way, abandoned your own people, became a criminal in your own military, simply to return a child to her mother." "Yes." "Why?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Because I lost my mother when I was young. I know what it's like to want her back and know she's never coming. Thessaly called for you every night in her sleep. She missed you so much it broke her heart. I couldn't give her much, but I could give her this. I could bring her home." For the first time, something changed in the queen's ancient eyes. A flicker of emotion crossed her face, gone almost before it appeared. "And your companions," she gestured to Amy, Ben, and Lisa, "they feel the same." Amy spoke up. "I hated your people killed my brother, I wanted revenge. But Thessaly, she taught me that hating an entire species for the actions of some is wrong. She's just a kid. She deserves to be with her family." Ben nodded. What he said, "This whole war is stupid. Maybe returning her won't end it, but it's a start." Lisa said nothing. She just looked at Thessaly with gentle eyes. Queen was silent for a long time. The entire hall held its breath. Then she spoke again, but not to Daniel. She spoke to her daughter. "Thessaly, come to me." Thessaly hesitated. She looked at Daniel, fear in her eyes. "Go on," he said softly. "It's okay." She walked forward, her small form dwarfed by the massive hall. Each step echoed in the silence. The distance between her and the throne seemed to stretch for miles. Finally, she stood at the base of the crystal throne, looking up at her mother. "I'm sorry," Thessaly whispered in her own language. The translator gave Daniel the words. "I was taken. I couldn't stop it. I was weak." "You were a child alone in danger," replied. "There is no weakness in that. I stayed with humans. I laughed with them. I learned their games. I called their sergeant a friend. I have shamed you." The queen said nothing for a moment. Then slowly she rose from her throne. She descended the crystal steps, her wings folding behind her. Every in the hall dropped to their knees. Only the humans remained standing, unsure what to do. Stood before her daughter. She was enormous compared to the small girl. One of her hands could have crushed Thessaly like an insect. Instead, she spoke two words that the translator gave Daniel in a voice thick with emotion. "Welcome home." And then the queen of the ruler of 1,000 worlds knelt before her child. The great hall of the palace had witnessed many things over its long history. It had seen coronations and executions. It had seen declarations of war and treaties of peace. It had seen the rise and fall of empires. But it had never seen anything like this. High Queen, the Iron Ruler, the Eternal Monarch, knelt on the crystal floor before her daughter. Her wings folded around them both like a protective shell, hiding mother and child from the watching thousands. Daniel could not see what happened within that embrace, but he could hear it. The queen was crying. Her tears were not like human tears. They glowed softly, like captured starlight, falling from her ancient eyes and landing on Thessaly's small form. And with each tear came a sound, a keening noise that the translator struggled to process. It was grief and relief and love, all mixed together into something that needed no translation. Thessaly spoke, her voice muffled but clear enough to hear. "Mother, don't cry. I'm home now. I'm safe." "I thought you were dead." The queen's voice was nothing like the cold, commanding tone she had used before. It was raw and broken, the voice of a mother who had lost everything and found it again. "I sent ships to find your body. I was going to burn the raiders to ash for what they did. I was going to make the universe pay for taking you from me. But I'm not dead. The humans saved me. Daniel saved me. The queen's wings slowly opened. She rose to her full height, but she kept one hand on Thessaly's shoulder, as if afraid to let go. Her face was wet with glowing tears, and she made no attempt to hide them. She turned to look at Daniel. "Human," she said, "Daniel Cole, come forward." Daniel walked toward the throne. Every step felt like walking through deep water. The hatred from the surrounding pressed against him like a physical force. They did not understand what they were seeing. Their queen crying, their invincible ruler showing weakness. And for a human. He stopped 10 feet from and stood straight. Whatever happened next, he would face it with dignity. "My people have called your kind many things," the queen said. "Vermin, parasites, monsters. For 11 years we have hunted you. For 11 years we have tried to erase you from the galaxy. I ordered the attacks myself. I watched the destruction with satisfaction. I believed humans were beneath us, worthy only of extinction." She stepped closer to him. Her compound eyes, wet with tears, studied his face. "I was wrong." The hall erupted in shocked clicking, looked at each other in confusion. Had they heard correctly? Had their queen just admitted error? Raised her hand, and silence fell again. "This human had every reason to leave my daughter to die. His people and mine are at war. We have killed his friends, destroyed his colonies, shown his kind no mercy. And yet when he found a child in danger, he did not hesitate. He saved her. He protected her. He brought her across the stars, through enemy territory, risking his life and his freedom for no other reason than it was right." She placed her hand on Daniel's chest, over his heart. He felt the warmth of her touch through his uniform. "In 300 years of rule, I have never seen such honor, not from my own people, not from any species in the galaxy. You, Daniel Cole, have shown me what humanity truly is, not monsters, not vermin, but beings of compassion, capable of mercy even toward their enemies." Daniel felt tears pricking at his own eyes. "Your Majesty, I only did what anyone should do." "No, you did what few would do. There is a difference." She turned to address the hall. "Let it be known throughout the Dominion. These humans came not as enemies but as friends. They returned my daughter to me, asking nothing in return. They have shown us that peace is possible, and I will not ignore that lesson." She looked back at Daniel. "The war will not end today. Too much blood has been spilled for such easy healing, but negotiations will begin. A ceasefire will be declared, and you, Daniel Cole, will be the first human ambassador to my court. You will help bridge the gap between our peoples." Daniel blinked. "Ambassador, Your Majesty, I'm just a soldier." "You were a soldier. Now you are something more. You are proof that humans can see each other as something other than enemies. Will you accept this duty?" Daniel thought about everything that had led to this moment. The crash site, the scared child, the long journey through hostile space. He thought about Amy and Ben and Lisa, who had risked everything to help him do the right thing. "Yes," he said, "I accept." The following months were difficult. Not everyone wanted peace. There were who hated humans too much to stop fighting. There were humans who could not forgive what had been done to their families. The negotiations nearly collapsed a dozen times. But Daniel and Thessaly worked together, showing both sides what cooperation looked like. The young princess became an advocate for peace, telling her people about the kindness she had experienced. The soldiers who had helped Daniel became heroes, their story spread across human space. Slowly, grudgingly, the war began to end. The final treaty was signed 3 years after Daniel first walked into the palace. It was not perfect. Old wounds took time to heal, but ships stopped shooting each other. Colonies were rebuilt. Families stopped losing their loved ones to a conflict that had already taken too much from everyone. On the day the treaty was signed, Queen summoned Daniel to her private chambers. It was the first time he had seen her outside of official functions. Without her throne and her guards, she seemed smaller somehow, more like a person and less like a legend. "I want to thank you," she said simply, "not as a queen to an ambassador, as a mother to the man who saved her child." "You don't need to thank me, Your Majesty. When we are alone, you may call me," she smiled, a strange expression on her alien face but genuine nonetheless. "Thessaly speaks of you often. She says you taught her that hearts can be brave even when hands are gentle. She says you showed her that strength is not just about fighting, but about choosing when not to fight." Daniel smiled back. "She taught me things too, that hope can survive even in the darkest places, that children see the world more clearly than adults." "She wants to visit Earth," said. "She wants to see the wheat fields you told her about." "I'd like that. I'd like to show her where I grew up." 5 years after the war ended, Thessaly stood in a field in Kansas. Her wings had hardened now, beautiful patterns of purple and gold spreading across them. She was no longer a child but a young woman, a princess who would one day be queen. The wheat stretched to the horizon, golden waves rippling in the wind. She had never seen anything like it. Velar Prime had crystal gardens and glowing flowers, but nothing so simple and beautiful as this. Daniel stood beside her, older now, with gray in his hair. The years of diplomacy had been hard, but seeing this moment made everything worth it. "It's beautiful," Thessaly said, using the same words she had spoken when they first escaped through space together. "I used to play here when I was young," Daniel said. "Before I became a soldier, before the war. It's where I learned that small things matter. A single seed becomes a stalk of wheat. A single act of kindness can change the world." Thessaly took his hand, her claws gentle against his skin. "My mother sends her regards," she said. "She wanted me to tell you that she thinks of you often, that you changed her more than you know. Tell her I think of her too, and I'm grateful she gave me the chance to prove what humanity could be." They stood in the field as the sun set, human and friend in friend. Somewhere among the stars, a queen looked up from her crystal throne and smiled. The war had taken so much, but it had also given something unexpected. It had given hope. And hope, Daniel knew, was the most human thing of all.